Welcome everybody to another episode of Command Combat Battle Reports. Today we'll be playing the game I invented called Command Combat Civil War. The table has been set up using the game's special setup rules where both players build the board with their cavalry points. We'll be playing the withdrawal scenario, with the Confederates being the ones to withdraw. The armies have been built out of the 1862 expansion, available on the website. Let's look at the teams, starting with the Confederate side. Take it away, Jeff!
Alright, so this is D.H. Hill's division with the Stonewall Brigade in there, and you've got one extra unit because of the trade that D.H. Hill does. And you've got the Texas Brigade down in the corner there, along with a bunch of artillery behind a fence. This is the 18-pounder Blakely. This is Crittenden's division that has some of it over here in the town as well. And the Swamp Brigade is down here in the swamp, appropriately enough. This is Jeb Stuart's division. Part of it is off because it was used for the setup phase, and therefore it starts off the table. You also have horse artillery on either side. And there's the Corps Commander for the Confederates, Leonidas Polk.
Now let's take a look at the Union side.
Charles Smith's division has been placed opposite the town with some artillery over here. John Reynolds' division has been placed over here. The district commander of Henry Halleck has been placed behind this division over here. The 42-pounder has been placed on the hill right over there. The tower has been placed on the top of the hill, and the flag stand over there at the creek. The Corps Commander has been placed next to the tower so he can send the signals. Sheridan set up there, back in the back on the turnpike. This is Ord's division, the Iron Brigade, which is close to the center there. It was pumped up by one because of D.H. Hill's prisoner exchange. And then there's a sharpshooter in the second to last row. It's been delayed because of an event that the Confederates had. This is the end of the first turn. Basically what's happened is they exchanged fire. Not a lot happened except they did kill one, the Union did kill one Confederate. Over here, there was a lot of massed artillery fire from there, and there, and they took out an entire artillery stand. They meanwhile fired back with that and their large gun and these guys and took out half a stand there. Meanwhile, I forgot to mention that Stuart ran up, especially his horse artillery, dismounted it and fired over here. Didn't do a lot, but they're now in play. Alright, so end of turn 2. And what we have is that over here, Hill's division shot over at these guys. Got attacked by a gigantic kitty who's taking over the field. Watch out, kitty. D.H. Hill's guys over here shot at these guys and routed one of the brigades. Over here you got one of the guns has been hit and silenced by the Union artillery over here, and the Union infantry went over to the other side of the town to kind of avoid the horse artillery. The horse artillery pushed up and started firing at them, and they've been basically exchanging fire with the Confederates in there. The Confederates have been getting kind of the better of them because they actually pushed one of the brigades back. So this is the end of turn 3, and this is how it looks. You had over here the Confederates in the cornfield continue to fire these guys, put them into disorder. Reynolds and the Corps Commander, who was Rosecrans, joined together and rallied the guys who had been routing, so now they're getting ready to come back in. Ord finally got here after being delayed by rain and that sort of thing for 3 days. It was a Confederate event, and the Union artillery, which was these guys, you know, including the 42-pounder that was there, they concentrated their fire, and I'd forgotten to mention that they had created this 1-inch gap last turn in the wall, and so they were able to finish off the artillery in the center there, and so now it's a bit more weakened. Over here, the Confederates managed to get the veteran Union unit to rout, but the green guys over here held and managed to cause the Confederates to go routing, while meanwhile the dismounted cavalry came up behind them, but got into disorder because they were routed right through. Meanwhile, Sheridan came up with his cavalry over here. They have now, at the very end of the turn, switched to red order, and they have gotten themselves in place. So that's the end of turn 3. So this is the end of turn 4. And basically what's happened is over here, Hill's guys exchanged fire, and each one of actually no, they just took the a hit. I think these guys had already been hit, and the rest are rallying. Ord's guys are coming up. They got the cavalry up to here. Their artillery's been firing over here. these Confederates over here have started to rally. And over there, oh yeah, over here they charged and took out one of the dismounted cavalry groups. And over here, one of Sheridan's cavalry has been hit. So end of turn 4, and this is how it all looks. Basically what happened was over here, Smith's division smashed into, well, what was left of his division that was still standing, his green guys, smashed into the Stuart's dismounted cavalry, destroyed one of the brigades, and killed Stuart, or actually knocked him unconscious, so he's out of the game. The rest are standing tall and trying to push them away. One of Sheridan's cavalry was hit, but he's still there, and these guys over here are rallying, while Ord meanwhile comes in. And Hill's men came out of the woods and is getting ready for an assault. So this is the end of turn 5, and it was pretty active. Over here, Sheridan's men charged these cannons, but didn't make it all the way. They rolled, and they came 1 inch away, which actually is the effect of their leader, Halleck, who causes all units to go 1 inch less. If he had not been the leader, they would have gotten to the artillery, and it might be a completely different story. Meanwhile, over there, they got pushed back. Smith's men got pushed back, so he went into a blue order. Meanwhile, Polk, who is in charge of the Confederates, immediately put him into red order, so next turn they'll probably be, heading in there. Over here, we got Crittenden, who is getting pummeled by some of this Union artillery, and also he has some of his men who, ran back, but they rallied and they're starting to go back, but they can't go forward because he is drunk. And he rolled for drunkenness at the beginning of the game. Now he has to roll every single turn to be able to move, and he has not been able to move. He's not been able to activate during any of his phases. Meanwhile, Hill's men came out, and they're marching forward. The Federal artillery concentrated on the front one and managed to put them in disorder. And the center Union guys are forming for an attack. So this is at the end of turn 6, and essentially what happened is here in the center, Crittenden sobered up enough to move those men back in the center, and those guys over on that side up forward. Over here, Hill's men fired at Reynolds' men and took out quite a few of them, really hurt them pretty bad, and Reynolds is just barely holding them together. He switched to a blue order at the last. He wouldn't have been able to do it, but Rosecrans just happens to be right next to the flag stand. The flag stand sent the signal over here, and Reynolds is exactly 15 inches, so he was able to change his order to blue, and he'll ostensibly be able to defend against Hill's men, which are coming up that direction. Over here, Sheridan pulled back, and his horse artillery has set up, and it looks like it's going to just become an artillery duel there because there's nobody left but artillery and a few guys. Here it is at the end of turn 7, and it's pretty darn bloody. Over here, she's had this big firefight where, like, not many of the Union guys are left, and Confederates took a few hits and silenced the guns and all that. Over here, the Texas Brigade, which had been sneaking all the way up around and was almost about ready to flank these artillery pieces, finally got pushed back. They have a special rule of when they get within 5 inches of something, they do extra damage, or they have extra on their firepower, meaning they can hit easier and do more damage to the morale. But they have to get, close enough for that, and they were literally 1 inch away from that. Over here, you finally started having infantry fire between one another, and the Union got the better of it. The second line actually got hit and were pulling back. But they're on a blue order, which means that they ignore the first 2 inches of pulling back, so they actually are fine. Yeah, that's about it. The rest of it, everybody, it looks like you're just about to have a big fight in the middle between Reynolds and D.H. Hill. So we're at the end of turn 8, and over here there was a big firefight. Went back and forth. I forgot to mention earlier that Crittenden was hit when he was up on the hill. And he got the result of shrugs it off, so he wasn't killed. In fact, it made his men's morale go up because he wasn't killed. He bravely shrugged off getting hit. Anyway, over here, the The artillery continues to pummel the Union and give them grief, and just manage to push back this this brigade over here. Although, actually, they are in a blue order, so they should have gone only about this far. So that's about where they are at the moment. And over here, the Texas Brigade tried to sneak around once again, got hit, and is just continuously, you know, being pushed back. Even though they're not really taking losses, it's just enough to cause them to take their morale check, and, you know, it's pretty bad at the moment. Even though this was supposed to be a thing between Reynolds and D.H. Hill in the middle, it's wound up being almost more of Ord, because Ord went over here and took this artillery battery. This other artillery battery that was over here got hit from artillery and destroyed. And then over here, the Confederates dismounted cavalry tried to charge after the broken Union over there, or you know, the two broken units, and they just barely were able to hold them off. And that's and then the Iron Brigade. Surprisingly enough, they actually pulled back. I mean, their morale is usually to the point where nothing affects them, and they just rolled really badly and managed to pull back. If they weren't the Iron Brigade, if it was anybody else, they would have routed. But anyway, so that's turn 8. So this is the end of turn 9, and very little in terms of what can be seen happened, except that this cavalry continued around with their sweep and took out this other dismounted cavalry's horses, but got destroyed against the cavalry itself. Took out a few men with them, but basically it was just exchanging fire there, exchanging fire here. A lot of people got disordered. One of these units managed to rout, but the Stonewall Brigade with Hill is managing to hold steady, and this artillery here has been really wreaking havoc on these guys. Oh, this artillery also got into place, and that's kind of what caused these guys to rout, because their wall isn't very good with that gap in it now. End of turn 10, and it began with this supply depot being pulled off, because this is the withdrawal mission. These guys rallied back here. The Stonewall Brigade got hit, but did not rout, and they're doing still pretty well. These guys rallied, really just a lot of shooting. The only thing was Sheridan brought his cavalry up because they wanted to just completely dislodge these guys. The cavalry got destroyed, but they did manage to make the other guys pull back. He wanted to just completely destroy them, but didn't manage to do that. Okay, end of turn 11, and it was a bad time to be in the Stonewall Brigade because they went low on ammo, and Hill got knocked unconscious right next to them, which is a bizarre coincidence because every general who's been knocked out in this game has gone unconscious. Reynolds and Ord are getting their attacks ready. Reynolds is basically keeping his guys here, even though they're getting hit by all that artillery over there. And over here, they've just been kind of firing back and forth at each other. Alright, so a lot of damage done to the Confederates this time, but actually, they held steady in their morale. Both the Stonewall Brigade and Hill's other brigade were at 9s, but they managed to hold where they were. They went into disorder, and they pushed the front rank of the Yankees back through their own men, so they're all in disorder now, so they aren't going to be able to do the charge they wanted to do. Crittenden came around. He wasn't drunk for a turn, so he managed to come around. Didn't quite get a flank shot, but he got around to the side of them and managed to push back his opponent, which was Reynolds, who went over to sort of protect the flank. Something I forgot to mention is this artillery piece that's been, you know, holding out against all that other artillery was finally destroyed this turn, but in the same turn, the Texas Brigade went routing, so I guess they went, our job here is done, and especially since this infantry came up, so it was time for them to run. This is the table at the end of turn 13. The Texan Brigade actually routed off the table due to the angle at which they routed. One of Hill's brigades is now routing. Stonewall Brigade just keeps on holding. They keep rolling an 8 when they have a 9 on the thing, on their morale, and because they're in the blue order, they don't move. The first 2 inches are ignored. So, anyway, everybody's just kind of holding where they are and getting sort of tedious as they just shoot at each other. I would like to point out here that the Iron Brigade and the Stonewall Brigade are face-to-face here and duking it out, and they're both low on ammo, so I guess they're throwing rocks at each other. So that's the end of turn 14, and therefore the end of the game. What happened was the Iron Brigade charged the Stonewall Brigade. and the Stonewall Brigade had all of this support there with smoothbore cannon, and the Iron Brigade needed a 0 in order to keep their charge going, and they managed to make it. And they had Ord with them and everything, and went up there, and Stonewall Brigade needed a 0 to stay. They made it, but then they had to roll it again and weren't able to make it, and they're running, and so is Hill's other brigade. Halleck had been killed the turn before, so he wasn't putting in his restriction of -1 inch anymore, so that's how they were able to do it. Everywhere else it was just exchange of gunfire, and that pretty much ends it.
Thanks for watching the game. If you want to see more about Command Combat Civil War, go to our website at www.commandcombat.com. Also, subscribe to our battle reports on this page, or go to www.commandcombatreports.com. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming, everyone!